All right, ready.
Anthony, good evening. Hi, once again, everybody. Thank you for making the time to join us here today. And with that said, I think that we're ready to get ourselves going here. A little joint ground control workshop here. Mostly Anthony explaining what's going on with his significant experience and background. That's not meant as a dig. Thank you for your time and your expertise. And I'll be here trying to run the scenario and just make sure that everything moves along smoothly for us.
User joined your channel.
So without further ado, what we're trying to do here today is talk about how to run ground to focus on efficiency, effectiveness, and versatility to the point that you can plug in anywhere, work anywhere. The concepts that work at one airport translate to other airports as well. We're going to talk a little bit about exactly how to do that. We're not going to be talking about how to deliver clearances. We're not talking about craft. We're not talking about how to make jokes on the frequency and how to work on Kennedy-specific stuff. It's going to be at Kennedy in part. That is a training aid because the airport has lots of unique opportunities to explore different scenarios and challenges. It isn't meant to make you a Kennedy controller. If you already are one, great. And if you're not working on that, that's fine too. If you do have questions out of this, please copy them down. Save them till the end. We'll have some time at the end, hopefully, to field some questions. And if you have more specific, in-depth stuff where you'd like to explore particular topics in a training environment a little more, bring those with you to whenever your next training session is, because any instructor would be happy to have you say, hey, I really want to focus on VFRs without flight following because that confuses me.
To your channel.
But without further ado, Anthony, if you'd like to take it away here from here, rather, with regards to .65 standards and syntactical baselines and how we plug SOPs into that.
Sure. Let me just change my push to talk to not a push to talk. Hold on.
Have you loud and clear?
And there we go. Okay. So this way I don't have to press push to talk. All right. So one of the things that Jason and I were talking about prior to the session was about the idea of using or how to implement 711065 or how to implement the phraseology in such a way that you could move from one airport to another and preserve it. One of the things that we've noticed over the years, especially recently when it comes to phraseology, is controllers trying to inject what they hear people doing, but they don't have the background to understand that there are shortcuts that are being made and exceptions that are being done strategically, but don't have a really good base for what the actual phraseology is. And that's important from a training standpoint, because when it comes from working with a person who has no background to a person who have an exceedingly amount of background knowledge, we have to find a standard that we'll be able to communicate to both of those people. In reality, you have training pilots, you have experienced pilots. On VATSIM, you have training control pilots, people who aren't even making an attempt, people who are barely making an attempt, and then you have people who are multi-credential that are doing it just to blow off steam and have some fun sharing their expertise. Be able to communicate to person A, B, C, and D, it's the commonality is using consistent phraseology. So the way to think of it is phraseology is the syntax. It's the way you execute how to speak. But then there are certain variables that you would inject depending upon the circumstance, or in this case, an airport. So the phraseology on how to issue a taxi instruction from A to B at Kennedy is going to be the same as it is at LaGuardia, as it is at Newark, as it is Republic and Reading Airport and all these other airports. The differences, of course, are the variables that you inject in between. So that would obviously be the runways, the taxiways. And then when we learn a little bit later about ideas in terms of how to handle volume and sequencing and adjusting depending upon the circumstance, those will change, but the idea doesn't. So in terms of the concept of having a choke point or a point at which you're going to tell an aircraft to hold short so that you can then sequence other aircraft in front or behind or vice versa, that's going to be the same no matter what airport you're dealing with, whether it be Republic or Kennedy. But the big difference, not the big difference, the only difference is the specific taxiways that you use, and then just learning through memorization and also through some sort of a memory aid, where you can use those effective choke points at whatever airport you're dealing with, so that when you move from one airport to another, you just kind of shift your brain in terms of what the variables are, but the syntax never changes. And if you learn it that way, much like if you're learning a piece of music, instead of learning the piece of music that you're learning in front of it and that's it, you learn the concept so that you can then apply that concept to whatever piece of music. It doesn't matter what it is. So it's kind of the same thing here. SOP's airport-specific elements are those variables I talked about. Brevity and priority. So it really comes down to understanding that phraseology is as succinct and direct a way to get that information to the pilots. But there are circumstances where you need to use plain English, and it's actually advisable to use plain English in order to convey what you need to convey in an efficient manner. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but if I'm using the preferred phraseology with somebody who is not adept in aviation English, is very, 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 very new, and I constantly am repeating myself and they're not getting the message. Well, instead of 15 repeats going back and forth, if I were to reduce it to a plain English request and say to them, somehow differently, but in a way that's very much understood what I'm trying to convey, well, then maybe I can actually get the 15 time repeat down to only say 2 times, and then I'm able to convey that information. It's, of course, on the shoulders of that pilot to now understand what the request was the first time, and that's something that, if you have the time, and there's been a discussion on Discord about when that time is available, giving that grace to the pilot in terms of giving them that little bit of instruction. I've always said since the beginning that VATSIM controllers have an unfair position, but in a way, we're an extremely important member. The unfair position is the fact that we're, first of all, very much more trained, right, than the pilots. The other thing is that there's this expectation of almost teaching, that there's going to be some sort of a teaching element that happens. And I can tell you that every time I plug in, there's at least one opportunity, at least one every time I plug in on VATSIM, where I'm teaching. But now the thing is I do the same thing on Pilot Edge. And I'll say that I've seen and witnessed in person the same thing done in real world too. There's a teaching opportunity to be had, and because we're constantly working as a team, that is being the pilot and the air traffic controller, whenever there's an opportunity to make either side more knowledgeable and better and more safe, that opportunity is taken, regardless of VATSIM, Pilot Edge, IVAO, or real world. The difference is the type of instructional opportunities that exist in the real world don't necessarily mirror what we're experiencing on VATSIM, because we are dealing with people who are severely undertrained at times. But it happens. So to be frustrated that you need to explain something in a different way, to be perturbed about the fact that it's going to take you 1 or 2 additional repetitions to get a point across, is actually very, very silly and blatantly untrue to what happens in reality. And I've said this before to many people. It's very intriguing when people complain about their experiences on VATSIM. And I laugh because I say, do you have any real world experience? And most of the time the person goes, no. And I said, well, then you have no clue what it's like in reality, because I can pretty much, everything you're telling me and describing me has happened in the real world. Maybe the frequency not as much, maybe the degree to which the incident occurred not be as dramatic, but missing taxiways, landing without a clearance, not hearing the call sign, botching an IFR readback, not descending or climbing or turning at the appropriate time. I mean, anything you can describe that has happened on VATSIM has happened in the real world. It's human nature. We're dealing with humans, right? So to get frustrated to the point where you're like rage quitting is understandable, but you just have to really keep yourself in check and understand that this is something that you're just going to deal with, and everybody has their own different levels of patience, own different levels of tolerance. The more and more you accept that there's a certain degree of education that's involved in every session, and at the end of the day you're dealing with fake aircraft, the more you just kind of ground yourself, figuratively and literally, the easier it'll become when you're dealing with the frustrations that are here. And then the issue is usually not one frustration. I'm kind of harping on the grace aspect here, but the issue is not usually on the one frustration that happens. It's usually because the one frustration alone would be fine, but it's the one plus the one plus the one plus the one plus the one. And it's not always the same person. So by the time the 20th aircraft has committed a very insignificant small error, that's 20 errors that you've experienced in one controlling session. So the only thing I would recommend to you is just in reality, take a break, change your position, go, tell everybody that you're going to be closing in the next 10 minutes and go and enjoy a sandwich or maybe jog around the backyard to get some physical activity and then come back in. But take a step away, breathe, come back, and you'll be much better for it. People who have been here for longer and have that higher tolerance have longer sessions where they don't go to hell. Not talking about the traffic scenario. I'm talking about their tolerance and their frustration. People who have a very different opinion of how things need to be run and the expectations so high about what the pilots are capable of doing have a very short temper. You manage yourself. You be aware of triggers and what your signs are, and you just keep your cool as best as possible. At the end of the day, to you, it's the 20th mistake made by the 20th pilot. But for the pilot, it was their first mistake and possibly only mistake. So you have to keep things in perspective so that when you're ready to ream out that guy who did something wrong after having to deal with 19 other people where you didn't necessarily ream them out, well, that one guy just logged on, has no clue that the other 22 transgressions happened. Plus, they weren't responsible for it. So you really have to keep everything in check. And remember that this is a highly, it is a very volatile, very, very training environment. Whether it's advertised or not, training is happening. One way or another, there are educational aspects about what's happening in every connection. So just be patient, be graceful, most importantly. Internal coordination, very, very huge in what we're going to demonstrate today at the event with all the volume of traffic, working ground, working with my local controller. Very important. When you're in the same space, it's ridiculously easy, right? But still, it was times where there was a loss of communication because we're so tunnel visioned. You have to remember that when working in an air traffic control tower, right, you're physically standing next to each other, you're talking to each other, you're bumping elbows with each other. You're able to communicate and negotiate things so rapidly, so quickly, that level of coordination is so much more refined, right, than what we're dealing with, which is pressing on the keystroke, having to talk to the guy on TeamSpeak while you're trying to work with the person on the network. Whatever the case is, and however that may be, just remember how important it is to keep communicating with the people who are working around you, and that the only way that this kind of works is if we're all working together as a team. So not unlike how the pilot and the co-pilot or first officer are sharing responsibilities, and that's what's called CRM or crew resource management. You guys in a control tower, or even just working with your overlying terminal controller or en route controller, you're constantly working with them as a team member, back and forth communicating, and you really can never communicate too much. And I say that within reason. Like, if there's a reason for you to have to communicate with someone that there's something unusual about this next pilot, or you want to give them a heads up about something that maybe they're not going to look in their remarks, just shoot them a message, shout over the line. Even if you don't get a response, shout it. I know that there are times when I cannot respond. I can't multitask a response, but I can absolutely hear what's happening. So, like, for example, how they do at the Tracon when they sometimes do roll calls and they just shout over the line. They don't expect the departure controller to respond. They just shout the name, boom, and it's done. And at least then there's an awareness of what's happening. So communicate often, communicate effectively, and be smart about what it is that you're communicating with in terms of your fellow controllers. Work more as a team. Never remember as best as you can that you're not a silo, that you're not working in a tunnel. And then as far as when to deviate standards and how it's kind of tied back to either grace or back to the idea of deviating from specific phraseology to use plain English to get your point across. But there are, the best way it was described to me, when I first was here, we used to map the specific location that you were to fly the plane or control the plane on approach, the specific location that they were told to descend, the specific location that they were told to go to a heading, the heading that they were supposed to be issued. Everything was so finely tuned, coordinated. They were these very, very detailed flow diagrams, right? And then there was a transition here at ZNY that quite honestly was more realistic, and that is we kind of deviated from using those flow diagrams into in now enforcing people to learn just the airspace. Benefit to that is that you're not pigeonholed into remembering that it has to be at a particular location that that person fly that heading or be at that altitude. It's not always going to work for a myriad of reasons. Some of them volume of traffic, some of them your mistake. I will say probably fairly many times it's their mistake, right? They miss the turn, they don't descend as quick, or they come in high from a non or uncontrolled center, and then all of a sudden now they're in trach on it, way too high in altitude, and you have other people that you're working with as a team. So understanding the airspace and knowing how much flexibility you have. What is the lateral dimensions and the vertical dimensions of space that I have? So now I can point this aircraft any heading I want and at any altitude I want, so long as it sits within the framework of space that I have command over. And if I need to go outside of that, well, then I know who to talk to, because I know who owns that airspace around me. So similarly, when you look at the airport diagram of the airport that you're working as a ground controller, there are certain standards we keep in play. Like at Kennedy, alpha clockwise, Bravo counterclockwise has been probably ingrained in you, and you go to sleep kind of repeating this over and over and over again through your training. But the thing is, alpha doesn't always have to go clockwise. Bravo doesn't always have to go counterclockwise. There are times, moments, and specific techniques where you'll want to have the flow move in the same direction or opposite direction to what is the quote unquote standard. At the end of the day, you work your airport. You have a standard. We abide by the standard. Now, what would get mucked up if we start to deviate from standard? Well, if you're, again, in a tunnel and you're starting to find that you're going to need to do something different than what is standard protocol, and you don't coordinate it with your fellow either ground controller or local controller, well, then that's going to cause an issue. So that's where level coordination has to exist. You communicate, coordinate with your fellow controller. We agree that for this circumstance, we're going to do this, or when the airplanes come off, instead of having them go in this direction, I need you to move that direction because I got closed taxiways here. I got, which in VATSIM you don't have to worry about, but in reality, it's always a nuisance when you have a closed taxiway. I got to park this plane because they have a maintenance issue. I got to move this Delta tug from A to B, and I got maintenance that needs to sweep the runway at the same time I got this aircraft that has to come from here to here. So how do I negotiate all these moving parts that are happening? Well, I work my facility. I know my taxiways. I know where generally I need to put the aircraft and how I can maneuver and what ability certain planes and vehicles have to maneuver, and then I just work it. So there are going to be times when you are tickled with the opportunity to change or deviate from standard operating procedure, and you have to stop for a moment and say, am I doing it in the interest of the most efficient use of my space? Am I violating any major rules or any FARs or regulations? And will it impact other people? And if the answer is no, I'm not really violating any rules, I'm not really violating any federal regulations, and yes, it will impact, but I've coordinated, then do it. Do it. Don't be afraid. Use the airport as you would use the airspace down the pike when you become a TRACON controller to effectively and or efficiently move the aircraft. There's always an association with safe and efficient. I avoid using the safe because it's ridiculous to say that in VATSIM. If we plant two planes together, it's not going to be a big deal. I think everybody will just drink their Coke and move on. But in reality, it becomes a safety issue. Here, it's more about just an efficiency issue. And we see this all the time at Across the Pond. We see this at our live events when we have a high volume of traffic moving in and out, and we're unnecessarily holding people in places, or we're unnecessarily or too conservatively launching them off the runway so that there's a line 30 miles wide, long in terms of people waiting for departure, or we have people being held at the ramp unnecessarily. Like, those are things that we can mitigate by making better use of our airport. And that's where you need to start to weigh what you do, whether it's by a standard or not. Most important is to coordinate. Want to advance that slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
What I was actually thinking next is to switch gears a little bit
Sure.
and call up an SOP airfield diagram for one of the airports we talked about yesterday. You'll recognize it right away. Most of the audience here won't.
You're pulling it up? Oh,
That's not it.
While he does that, I just want to review a couple things. So everybody should you're here for ground training. You have to know 711065 Section 3 or Chapter 3, Section 7, and then everything else. So 3.7 or Section 7 has to do with taxi and ground movement procedures. That, for the most part, you need to memorize and know. So there's in air traffic and life in general, there's going to be memory items, and then there's going to be just uh, uh, items that you can recall based on a memory aid. This has to be a memory item. Everything in this section in terms of phraseology and procedures, it's not that difficult, and there's not a lot that I'm doing a really quick perusal here. You know, like localize a critical area, borderline necessary for VATSIM, but you know, precision obstacle free zone, you know, like you could probably use your common sense to say, all right, what is something that I'll likely see on VATSIM versus something that is obvious, like for example, the ground operations or runway proximity, moving up to another heading here. Taxi and ground movement operations, which has the bulk of the phraseology used, right? Those things you just have to memorize and get familiar executing with practice examples. So when you guys were doing clearance delivery, perhaps it was told to you at some point, one of the best ways to practice any of your phraseology is to do it during other moments where you're just doing routine things and you can let your mind focus on something else. Perfect example, and I kid you not, when I would go take a shower, I would, this is way back when, this is pre-CTI, this was like the beginning of VATSIM, my beginning of interest with working traffic, and then eventually when I was going through my CTI training, you know, I would, as I was washing my hair, I would be reciting clearances, right? And just understanding the syntax, I use that word again, the syntax of the phraseology. Driving, right? And you're looking at a license plate, right? When you're learning alphanumerics, I'm sure every pilot's done this in training. You look at the license plate and you just say back the numbers and the letters in the alphanumeric format. So you're just taking mundane, normal things that are happening in life, and you're injecting some sort of a memorization practice, right? You do the same thing with ground. You create scenarios. I don't care if it's a runway 37. No, keep a real runway, but I don't care if it's right or wrong in terms of the letters. It could be fake airport. It could be runway 36 taxi via Alpha Bravo. Who knows if that even is a true thing? It doesn't matter. The syntax is what you're trying to memorize. The runway number and the actual taxiways are the variables that you inject depending upon your location. I'll give you a perfect example when it comes to issuing an instruction with a hold short, whether it be holding short of a taxiway or holding short of a runway, right? We know that we are not to give the full route. That's actually something that has fairly recently been changed. I use that kind of liberal. It's not like it was yesterday. It's been a little bit while now. But in other words, if I'm telling an aircraft to taxi to a particular runway, but I want them to hold short at a taxiway that's like 15 taxiways from the runway, I'm not going to give them the full route. I'll just say, hypothetically, it goes from A to D. I'll say runway 31, taxi via Alpha, hold short Bravo, and then stop. Like that's a syntax and a procedural item that you remember. Then when they're ready to continue, you give them the rest, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and then they move to the rest of the runway. Those are the syntax items that I would recommend that you just really remember. Follow the behind the second American to the right, or behind the American to the left, or behind the 737 to the right. Follow the 737 ahead, or follow the traffic. These are terms that you'll use, and this is how you'll inject certain scenarios into it. By the way, for anybody who's new and just unfamiliar with the 1065, syntax is capital letters, and variables are in parentheses as italics. So looking at, for example, 372 of taxi and ground movement operations, right? It says, for example, cross, capital letters, and in parentheses a runway, which we would inject the variable in there, at, inject the variable in there. So cross runway 31 at kilo, hypothetically, right? Well, there's the injected variables, there's the phraseology. That's what you would practice in the shower. And then at the bottom of all the phraseology examples, you'll see examples, and those examples are what it would be to combine the two, and that's generally how you would implement the syntax and the variable. All right. So I know this airport. I don't know if we're supposed to say it, but yeah, quite familiar with that.
Yep, just to
User was moved
hopefully
to
give
your
everybody
channel.
just an airport that they're not necessarily familiar with. Anthony, you get to cheat a little bit here.
Yeah, sorry. And I have to turn off my thing so that I don't interfere with you. Go ahead.
No, it's no worries. So here you are. You're opening up this airport. It's a pretty complicated layout here. You've got points of interest all over the airport. There's a terminal building marked on the east side of the airport. There's at least 2 FBOs. There's runways all over the place, likely to be active simultaneously. And this airport gets a significant volume of traffic of kind of all types. There's GA, there's rotor wing, there's I think there's even some airline and yeah. So, Anthony, what are you looking at when you open up an airport that you haven't worked before? About how do you apply all the syntactical baselines, all the standards you just talked about to a place? How are you looking at this from a ground control perspective? What are you looking for? Where are you thinking about like stopping people? Where are you thinking about taxiing people?
So when I look at an airport like this, I'm looking at where the having knowledge of what the general operation is in terms of what the default runway configs are. It's helpful to kind of keep your mindset on. All right, they're going to be landing mostly usually in this direction, and I'm going to know that they're going to exit here. So I got to watch those particular spots. There's from a pilot perspective, if I'm looking at, so I'm going to talk as a pilot right now. As a pilot, when I look at an airport diagram, you look for what are called hotspots, and you'll see that there is one hotspot here, HS1. There are airports that have multiple hotspots. Hotspots are identified as areas of particular interest in terms of a need for increased situational awareness. There's a greater possibility of runway incursions or taxiway incursions or incidents happening in these particular locations. Hotspot areas are areas that are identified for a reason, and whether it be virtual or not, it's probably a high traffic area, maybe because it's a entry or exit out of a familiar FBO, a popular terminal, or its junction of taxiways makes it somewhat difficult to navigate. So pilots tend to confuse or accidentally maneuver into the wrong place. So on those particular locations, you're taking a heightened awareness so that if you're giving it, now as a controller, if you're giving a taxi instruction in that location, you're paying particular attention to the maneuvering of the aircraft at that time. If, as a pilot, as I get close to, say, the intersection between Juliet and Juliet 4, I'm going to cross-check 2-3 times, make sure that I'm making the correct turn to the correct location so that I know that I'm following the appropriate directions. In this airport, identifying where your general aircraft are going to go is important so that you can flow the aircraft in the correct manner. You know that your terminals are to the right. You know the FBOs predominantly are on the south side of runway 26 left. I know that there are places like, for example, Delta 4 and Juliet 2. In fact, I had an aircraft just the other day come in on 30, exit on Gulf. Gulf is a high speed, and you can tell by the angle. So I know that they're going to likely exit. If they miss Delta 4, they can exit on Gulf. But Delta 4, Lima 4 is a transit taxiway that gets me from the FBOs to the south side to the terminals. And there's also an FBO over there up in the northeast by Kilo. So again, understanding your geography, understanding what I might need to do in a circumstance of Delta 4, Juliet 2, if I have an aircraft come off of 30, I'm going to turn them onto Delta, say coming down to the south if they're going to Signature, and have them hold short of Delta 4. Now, that is kind of going into the discussion about choke points that we're going to talk about specifically at Kennedy, but an example of a place where I'm going to hold an aircraft, if I'm not confident that I'm going to be able to maneuver other aircraft beyond that point, or if I need to have that aircraft stop because there might be a possibility of me wanting to maneuver an aircraft in front of them and not give them necessarily priority, I might tell them to hold short Delta 4 first while I address other aircraft. And then as the situation permits, I can have them continue, or by having them hold short Delta 4, I can maneuver another aircraft how I need to in front of them as it's situationally appropriate. For example, I have somebody coming up from the ramp over here on the left or west side by the fire station over by Juliet, and I want to have them depart 26 left, and I have an arrival here holding short of Delta 4. I can sequence the departure in front of them because I already know that the other guy's holding short of Delta 4. So it's this idea of trying to figure out where if this, reality and virtual, if this is the only guy moving on the plane, on the field, and I got nothing in conflict with 2-6 left, I can give him the full route, no problem. But what we're trying to introduce today is such a higher level of thinking that when you're presented with higher volume of traffic and there's a lot of stuff going on, what are ways that you can keep the flow moving without looking like a deer in headlights or constantly giving an instruction and having to amend it? For example, having that guy come off a 3-0 and just sit and chill, or give him the full route instruction and then all of a sudden have him stop movement, hold short, this immediately, because, I have this other guy that's suddenly in conflict. These are things that can help you to navigate the direction and flow of the environment in real time.
All right, cool. Thank you. I cut off for just a second there, but I don't think we missed much. It sounded like maybe a coherent sense, so I'm not going to ask to repeat there. And if anybody's curious what the airfield is here, I'll go ahead and zoom out now. There we go. Now we can take that over to Kennedy here, and we'll go to that airfield diagram and talk about how to apply that same concept of looking ahead to the hot spots and trouble spots and all that. So here we are. Say even the non-Kennedy controllers here are likely at least a little bit familiar with the airport layout. It's hard not to be. Anthony, anything you'd like to talk about specifically as far as this airport? Again, just big picture to start out.
Nothing big picture. Here's big picture. So terminology to know, and now I'm going to talk a little bit Kennedy specific. Terminology to know, you can see my cursor, but you can see your cursor, Jason. Can you go up over by Quebec? Yeah, over there. So, and Papa and all that. So that area here is the general. See, it says General Aviation Terminal. That area is what's called the GAT, and that's GAT is a shortened abbreviation for the General Aviation Terminal that is very familiar or very commonly mentioned here at Kennedy. Similarly, go over to Terminal 4. That's the International Arrival Terminal. We'll usually refer to that as the IAT. So there's the GAT and the IAT. But that, if you ever happen to be listening on live ATC and you happen to hear that phraseology, terminology, that's exactly what they meant. Having an understanding where general aviation generally parks is important because that's where you want to send them. There's a couple things that when you're learning ground, and I've had the ability of actually on a number of occasions working scenarios in the simulator at Kennedy. I was just very fortunate to have both friends who were controllers and RPOs working there, and mine before the FAA got rid of the ability of CPCs being able to teach at CTI schools. One of my best instructors at Vaughan was Tom Sargent, who was a very, very experienced controller at Kennedy. Tom and Steve are like on the same level, but both retired within a couple of years of each other. Actually, I think Tom retired before Steve. But from Sarge and from the others, I've learned a lot about the nuance of Kennedy and understanding where aircraft are likely to need to push onto an active taxiway is obviously important. That hotspot 1 is a very big volatile area because of the way that like Alpha and Bravo and Juliet all kind of like blend in a way that makes it somewhat confusing, especially when you're on the ground. So that's important. Kilo is a sequencing point. Kilo Echo, obviously, is a departure point. Juliet is a sequencing point. Anything like Lima, Mike Alpha, or November, those are all other sequencing points here on the south side. And when we get into working traffic in different scenarios, I'll show you how you can have aircraft hold short of those very specific locations depending upon runway config. And it really helps to negotiate how and where you're going to place, or the sequence of the aircraft that you're going to put prior to switching them over to local. Other than that, just understanding your terminals, understanding where in reality, you're memorizing airlines, you're memorizing gate numbers, but generally having an idea for where the airlines park, even from a virtual standpoint, is helpful. Understanding Americans at 8 and JetBlue's at 5, and then a lot of guys, Delta and so on and so forth, want to come into 4. Understanding 7 British Airways, and you got FedEx up in the north, you got UPS in the over by Taxiway Sierra. These are things that you can choose to memorize or have a memory aid of, and it's very simple. Like when I first started, I used to have a binder. I first started VATSIM. I had a binder with all this information, and I would go and I would print out the airport diagram, and I would go and research through Google. I would just research where the airlines typically parked, and I would just have a familiarity with that. And then I would overlay that information onto an airport diagram that I would have in my binder, and that would be my memory aid. And I wouldn't necessarily memorize it. I wouldn't say it was memorized at first. It was just kind of something that was over time learned. But having a general understanding of where you're going to throw aircraft and where they need to go is very important when it comes from a movement perspective. JetBlue, Delta Alpha, Foxtrot, like these are things that are programmed into your brain as far as where they're going to be coming in or out of, right? Coming out of Kilo Fox or Kilo Golf on the gates that are on the south side of Terminal 4, or coming out of Lima Alpha, or, well, it used to be Lima Alpha, but November, or any of like Mike Alpha, for example, if you're coming out of that terminal 1. These are things that you start to memorize. And the reason why that's important is that you then learn a route or taxi route that is logical from those locations, and it becomes almost knee-jerk. In fact, I was talking with Chris, who was sitting next to me at the live event, and I was trying to encourage him that you can, and this is what spawned my post in the Discord, is it's good and very helpful to memorize these standard routes, because on a knee-jerk reaction, you can issue them when you hear an American call from Tango Alpha and they're going to 22 right. It's Alpha Victor Charlie, cross 31 right at Victor, and it's like it's immediately kind of boom. You understand exactly what needs to happen. Delta calling out of Delta Alpha to 31 left, all right? Delta Alpha, Alpha, Golf, and Zulu cross 22 right at Golf. These are like things that are just programmed in your brain, and you're able to just spit it out without having to think about it. Now, yes, you do have to know the traffic that's around, what's coming in and out, will they conflict? I'm not talking about doing it blind to the real circumstance of what other aircraft are around. I'm saying that given the circumstance, you don't have to think and look and, all right, I gotta stare at the diagram and figure out how I'm gonna go from here to here to here. No, you have a route, you have an idea, you have a game plan, and that's where you're gonna go to first. And then as the circumstance adjusts, you make your necessary amendments, control your airport back to what I said all at the beginning. You control your airport however you need to make it work as efficiently as possible. I would say that one of the fun things that was done to me when we were I was taxiing an aircraft from the American terminals to 31 left was the active runway. Actually, I was setting him to Kilo Echo. So it was 31 left it was Kilo at the time. So it was 31 left at Kilo. And I was having them come from the American terminal. This was at the lab. And I had my buddy Al Navarro was working as an RPO. So I had the aircraft turn left on Bravo, right? And we have to continue on Bravo to Kilo Echo. So it's very simple, right? Make left Bravo, Kilo Echo. Okay, beautiful. Now, in that moment, as the aircraft's taxiing south on Bravo, I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm doing JetBlue out of the Terminal 5. I'm doing a guy out of the IAT. I'm pushing somebody onto Sierra or whatever the scenario was. And purposely, Al made the aircraft continue from Bravo into Mike Bravo and basically go past the hold bars, violating the runway, actually causing a runway incursion. And it was done at such a time where I was distracted that unless you're really paying attention to areas like that, which I would consider to be another volatile area, you can get tripped up. And if someone makes a mistake, now, if you don't catch it, if that aircraft goes beyond those hold bars, into the runway, and now locals just launched a guy at 31 left of the Kilo Echo, and no one knows about it, you have a very serious circumstance that could have happened. And I remember he alerted me. He said, "Hey, check out Mike Bravo." I look, and there, sure enough, the plane's like inching its way onto the runway. And I said, "Oh crap, I missed that." And I had to start the problem over again. It was a very cool experience, but it's those type of errors that they inject purposely make sure that you're keeping track of the aircraft as they move. Again, this was not VATSIM. This was real world traffic scenario in the lab at Kennedy, and this was something that they prepare you for because it may or may not happen.
I have one little Kennedy-specific thing I'd like to just inject. No, really a great time to do it. But one thing we frequently talk about is readback, rex, pushback, pause, discretion. This is gate 6 at Terminal 7. The yellow highlights where the actual gate is. Right here, circled in red, is the single solid line and the single dash line that indicates the border of the non-moving area. Right behind it in the green is taxiway alpha. There is no way to push back from this spot without pushing onto alpha. So if you tell them push back at your discretion, you're setting them up for failure and yourself when they push right into alpha and potentially into your own sequence. So this and a few other spots like it, you can see the spot right next to it here. I think it's gate 7 and 8 share this. And pretty much all the UPS spots off of Sierra, they all share that characteristic of pushing onto a movement area. There's not a whole lot of shortcuts I had to know this except for where this one came from, Google Maps, with the satellite view turned on, because sceneries don't always actually contain the right stuff.
And as far as finding out where they are, if they don't specify, and we're not expecting you to remember the gate numbers, unless this is like this is one gate at one terminal, this you could argue is very easy to memorize, but they may not have it as gate 6 in this simulator. And I mean, you can inject a million other reasons why this is not going to be something that is very doable here on VATSIM, other than seeing their physical location and understanding that if they were to push back from that location, they're pushing onto an active taxiway. So what I would say is, ask if they are in a ready squawking mode C and they don't have the transponder on, have them do it, verify that what you're looking at is that aircraft, and then issue appropriately and say, advise ready to, or when you're ready to push, let me know, because you're going to have to push onto the active taxiway. The pilot may not really understand that, know that, and you as a controller may not. And at the end of the day, if it happens accidentally, no one's pressing the alarm and no one's firing you. It's an item of, that's interesting. And then you log that into the brain and say, okay, next time I'll only see if I can find a way to prevent that from happening. That's all.
Yeah, thank you for that. While we're briefly sidebarred, let's talk about helicopters and why they're not actually scary.
Yeah, this feels like it doesn't fit, but the reason why we wanted it is because we figured that the audience was significant enough that we figured that we would put this to bed. And it was funny because this happens every cycle that we talk about, and people are just so mystified when it comes to working helicopter ops. And it's so confusing why this is so hard. It's so ridiculously easy, but go for it.
Yeah, there's just not that much to actually really cover specifically about helos, especially from a ground control standpoint. We get to hide behind at the N90 majors. We get to hide behind the fact that we're not allowed to do air taxi because the Port Authority says so. Well, we're all also qualified to control ground at other airports too, where it is. But the phraseology is there in the .65, and it's a pretty cut and dry thing. It's a little bit different in terms of how you actually issue the commands on the frequency, but that's about it. And other than that, from a ground control perspective, there's just very little to do with them most of the time, unless they're trying to move around. For the most part, give them off at the tower. The existence of the helicopter routes might not be covered in the initial S1 stuff, so that's a little bit potentially confusing the first time you hear it, maybe especially if you're doing clearance for the guy. But again, just know that the routes exist. This is something readily accessible on SkyVector. Again, it might take a second to go look at it, but for the most part, if you're working ground, do you actually even care where the route is? Usually, probably not. You're just going to give them the clearance out of the Bravo. From a ground perspective, I can't really think of anything else to say about that. And clearance-wise, there's really not that much to add to that either, I don't think. I don't want to make light of it either, because I know everybody feels a little bit of consternation the first time you have the helicopter call up. But it's just worth taking a deep breath for a second, thinking, what actually does this guy need from me? He just wants to move. He doesn't even want to move. He just wants to go talk to the tower. Okay, talk to the tower. See you.
Yeah, I mean, there are specific routes that are flown by these pilots, and we can link, we could feel free to link that in what will be in addition to the video of the session. Why don't we throw a couple links in there that are specific to 1065 and to the helicopter route, so that people can put it all together in context. When it comes to flying these routes, they'll proceed via the route, and when it comes to an aircraft that's operating or wanting to operate on station, wherever it might be, you negotiate now kind of graduating into local operations, but hypothetically, you're just going to have them, you're going to negotiate with the pilot where they want to go, how they want to get there. Does that work within your airspace? And if it does, just give them an instruction that puts them in a place that is not in conflict with your other traffic. I mean, it's literally that simple. If PD-14 says he's going to work on station at whatever blank at the university or at the hospital or on location X amount of miles from the airport, and they can chill there at or below 1,000, then say, okay, proceed as requested. I mean, it really, what I have found most often, when it comes to working with these helicopter pilots, especially on VATSIM, believe it or not, is more often than not, they actually know what they're doing. And I mean, I found myself basically just clearing them into the Bravo and proceeding as requested, and that's it. They're like, yes, you know what you want to do what you want to do, but I want you to be at or below this altitude, or I want you to be within this position of this reference, so that I know, A, I can anticipate where you're going to be, and B, I know how to separate other traffic from you, and that you will be separated from other traffic. I mean, that's literally as easy as it gets. I mean, I don't particularly find that to be any challenge. I don't know if it's because it's just this idea of not having full control over it. I guess it kind of gets lumped into the idea of working VFR.
User was moved
In
to your
VATSIM, there's
channel.
this people generally being afraid of working that type of traffic because of how little control you have to give over the circumstance, versus the IFRs that have everything so scripted and so maneuvered and so positioned. But when it comes to working VFR helicopters, that is, then it's just like it's the same as working any other VFR aircraft, where you're going to give whatever control information you need to by regulation, which in this case, if they're operating within the Bravo airspace, you're clearing them to the Bravo, and then by the nature of where they need and how they need to operate, so that they are predictably in a location separate from other aircraft, and that's it. IFR helicopters are treated just like IFR aircraft, in the sense of the IFR clearance, taxi, departure, and the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, from that standpoint, it should be a one-to-one in your mind. But as far as everything else, you're familiar with the routes, so that you're not thrown for a loop when they announce it by a name. We'll send you the link. Familiar with the phraseology, which is as simple as looking at the syntax that's listed in 711065, and then just your familiarity with the airspace, local controllers, knowing your airspace boundaries, ground controllers, just understanding maybe the basics of the type that you're dealing with, so that you can't give them an actual ground taxi, but you're going to give them a hover taxi type of thing, or a hover taxi versus air taxi at another airport, not necessarily the ones where air taxi is prohibited. But I mean, other than that, I don't know if there's really anything more to say on the topic. I think that you'll be able to manage it in the shower a couple times, fabricate a couple scenarios, and then once you kind of go through it a bunch of times, it'll become more and more like second nature.
Cool. Thank you for that. And back to our regularly scheduled programming now, ground control stuff. I've already talked a little bit about some of the next slide here about managing departures just organically when we were looking at that Kennedy airfield diagram a little while ago. We already definitely talked about defensive posturing and looking out for those hot spots. Sequencing a little bit. We'll get into exactly where we're going to do that, but I'm actually not going to ask Anthony to talk too much about exactly where or when right now, or talk about that too much, since we're going to be in the box here in a little bit anyways, and you'll get to see that organically happening anyhow. And golden tow bar is avoiding the situation wherein you have two airplanes nose to nose. At rear world, the only way to get one would be to get to unscrew it, would be to send the tug out to go push one of the airplanes away from the other one. On VATSIM, of course, we have the luxury of you can just disconnect and move and reconnect or whatever, but still obviously undesirable from a ground control perspective. So if you position yourself defensively and keep an eye on who's going where and make sure they're complying with the instructions they're given, that's how you do that. Anthony already covered exactly when the .65 directs issuing an abbreviated taxi route vis-a-vis signing the entire clearance. So I don't think that there's too much more to talk about there. Anthony, do you have anything you'd like to say about specifically departures?
Not more technique things, but I think that we'll do in the box when it talks about, not overloading one particular taxiway and sequencing it on another and all that jazz.
All right. Hey, when would you say contact the tower versus monitor the tower versus nothing at all, Anthony?
That's a good question to ask, and I think most VATSIM personnel don't have a real good grasp on this. So just so we're very clear on the regulation, there is absolutely no need for an air traffic controller to tell a pilot to contact or monitor local or tower control on departure. So if you're maneuvering on ground and ground tells you to go from A to B, and that being the runway, I can switch to the tower controller. And it's suggested, the aim suggests when. In theory, I just can switch over whenever I can. And what is logical and what is by best practice is to switch when you're holding short of the runway, because at that point you're no longer responsible for, you're not no longer talking to ground, and you're no longer needing to talk to ground, you're needing to talk to the tower controller. So the real rule is that if I don't talk to you, you maneuver monitoring on the ground frequency until you're short of the runway or in sequence. Sequence being if you're the number 2 aircraft, 3 aircraft, so on and so forth, and you make the switch on your own. The opposite, meaning you landed, you're with local, all right, and now you're going to go from, you're exiting the runway. You cannot change the frequency until being told to. And there's like a very little nuanced regulation that really defines that. And the regulation is that when you receive an air traffic clearance, you are supposed to abide by that clearance indefinitely until told otherwise. Think of it this way. Clearance delivery may say contact ground for taxi, but generally that's not the procedure. So clearance will give the clearance and say, read back correct, and they're end of business. Pilot at their discretion will then call ground. They were never told to contact ground. They call ground on their own. Then they will switch to tower. So the nuance of the regulation is you are always told to contact tower on arrival. So when you have an approach control and the approach clears you for the approach, now they say contact this controller. That's an instruction. That is now a clearance that you need to follow. And if you think of it that way, once you are on that local frequency, you cannot get off that frequency until the tower controller gives you permission. So big important item when it comes to VATSIM, when you land, stay with local. When you're leaving, you can make the switch on your own. Now, at a big airport, there are exceptions to that or modifications to that. At smaller airports, inevitably, it will always be that case. You will never be told to contact a monitor unless it's a very specific circumstance that they're trying to work. Now, at big airports, there is a need to micromanage the change. For example, when you have parallel runways and you have real estate in between those runways, it's not necessarily understood by pilots who owns what. So therefore, when you have aircraft that are in local control territory, even if they're moseying on Zulu and Yankee and they're cruising, they may not realize that the other aircraft in that vicinity are with local and not communicating necessarily with ground. So therefore, at a convenient time, you're going to want to switch them over as quick as you can. Or for sequencing, or for the matter of local control being able to fine tune the sequence. So if I got people on Juliet and I have people on Zulu, but I want to give the local controller an opportunity to change however the sequence is so that it's advantageous for the releases, then I want to get them over to that guy as quick as possible. Monitoring versus contact really comes down to what if you have a guy who's fifth in line for departure, do they really need to talk to the tower controller yet? No. Is it advantageous for them to have situational awareness and be able to be called out? Yes. So if they're number one, you say contact, or if there's if they're crossing over 22 right and there's no need to immediately reach out to the tower controller until they're holding short of the runway, but you don't want to have them on the ground control while they're still moseying down Zulu or moseying the rest of the way on Juliet, then you could say monitor, because in that case, tower controller will reach out to them as soon as they're holding short because they should have been monitoring that entire length of time. Obviously, if you have 15 aircraft that are waiting and the 16th aircraft gets into position in line or in sequence, there's no reason for them to contact, so you'd say monitor. At some airports, like Los Angeles, I'll give you a perfect example. On your way to 25 right, there's a little sign on the, not little, but there's a sign that's actually on the taxiway that says when to monitor. So you don't even have to be told to. The sign literally says monitor tower from this point forward. So at certain airports, they micromanage it that way. And the reason why it's done is because of sequencing. The reason why it's done is because of how the real estate, meaning the taxiways, are divided up in terms of ownership, and just being able to manage the precise point at which each person is talking to an aircraft. But at the smaller airports, don't expect it as a pilot, and B, don't even issue it. Don't say contact, don't say monitor, unless you're working a busy event and there's literally 20 people leaving out of Republic. In that case, maybe you want to micromanage, but even still, again, there's no expectation. So when what we're trying to teach here is going to be somewhat Kennedy specific, but we're also wanting you to leave here today with very general conceptual understanding so that you can apply it and know when to apply it at all the airports that are in our facility and others. Take it away there, Jason.
All right. With that said, one more slide, then I'll give everybody a chance to go breathe for a second. Arrivals we talked about a little bit already, just as far as, again, coordinating with local for contact versus monitor. The reason that monitor works so well for arrivals is that it is known exactly where the aircraft are, and they're not going anywhere until a controller tells them to. So it's pretty easy at Kennedy for, say, it's a 4 right or 2-2 left day to give an arrival and taxi via Gulf, then left Alpha to the ramp after you cross the runway, then monitor ground point 9 for your taxi in. Obviously, not the phraseology for that, but the point is you can hear, like, that's a good way to know for sure. You can contract that out between ground and local, that you're not going to know exactly when these aircraft are going to be on the frequency. So as long as everything's normal, nothing has to get said. They're still there, so ground can say something. If you need to stop an aircraft to let somebody else out or manipulate something, if somebody misses a turn, the communication's still there. I've seen a couple of newer controllers on the network be a little bit hesitant to do that because there's like a fear that like they're not actually going to comply or make the frequency change or whatever. But it works better than you think, and it really, really streamlines and speeds up operations when it works well. It just has to be something that everybody's on the same page about, knowing who's going to be where in frequency land when. But for especially arrivals coming to the ground controller, that's very solvable. Where do you enter the ramp? A question that, though, works a lot better real world than it does on the network because not everybody knows. Even when they know what gate they have, they might not know the actual entrance that they're using into the ramp. So again, in our attempt to try to be good team players and help everybody get a little better and smarter and at least get them to where they're going to go, if you have a Navigraph subscription, which is probably recommended, that comes with Jefferson's complete with all of the taxiway, all the parking gate diagrams as well. So when they tell you they're parking Bravo 28, you can look at, in this case, the graphic that's in here and figure out that they're probably going to need to enter the ramp at Kilo Foxtrot or Kilo Golf because that's how you get there from there. And so on and so forth. And if it takes you a second to figure out this answer for them, then don't feel too bad about making the pilot wait somewhere while you figure out what they should have known if they would have planned the mission a little bit better in the first place. But we can try to help them out, and usually it's not that cosmic. And again, with familiarity, a lot of this stuff just starts to snap into place as far as repetition and memory anyways. But again, like if you need to take a second to look it up, people understand too if you need a minute, and if you're going to try to help them figure out where to go, they'll usually give you the same grace that we're asking of ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand no one is expecting any of you. I don't. I don't have every gate number memorized. I don't have. So it was interesting. Whenever I talk, and I've had an opportunity to teach with and talk to controllers from different areas, every area that you could think of, in every position, so on and so forth. And the commonality is that a route controller knows everything about their airspace and everything in great detail about working traffic en route. But now, if you ask him some type of wake turbulence separation or same runway operation SRS type thing that has to do with local control, chances are they're not going to know. Vice versa. If I got the best Kennedy tower control in the world that memorized every detail, can know where every grease stain is on the field, right? And then I say to them, so how does approach vector in this sector to go from blah, blah, blah? They wouldn't know. Everybody is a master at their part of the piece of the puzzle. And then there's another master who's working in that next piece. No one is expected, like on VATSIM, to essentially try and be masters of all of it. I mean, the gargantuan thing that we're trying to do here on VATSIM is just unrealistic. And to be honest with you, one of the things at Pilot Edge that we've had trouble somewhat over the years is acclimating real world controllers to this type of environment. Because on Pilot Edge, sometimes we'll have two people working, and that'll be one person working all the radar and one person working all the non-radar. So if I have a real world controller and I say, okay, it's great that you worked at, SoCal Tracon Burbank area and that you know everything about it. But now I need you to know control tower operations at every airport within ZLA. I need you to know ZLA every sector. I need you to know Las Vegas Tracon. I need you to know Santa Barbara Tracon, Point Mugu approach. And their mind goes, what? This is great. And it's hard for them to track all that because we're talking about doing things on such a explosive level compared to what it is that you're trying to do in reality. So Brian among us here is Brian working at Kennedy. He's focused specifically on N90 Kennedy, right? That his background here on VATSIM affords him an opportunity and appreciation for the other stuff. But realistically, he is a master of his domain. But to the Kennedy Tower Controller, he's a master of his domain, if that makes sense. So no one is expecting you to become the master of this domain. It's all about being realistically believable and trying to work as best as you can with memory aids and memory items combined to give that believable approach. So to really round this out and kind of put a button and bow on it, negotiating what specific spot number and gate number, it would be nice to know it if you knew it, and it would be nice to have a JEP chart subscription, but that costs a lot of money. So I mean, like, when it comes down to it, just tell me the freaking taxiway you need to get in. I don't care if it's gate 14, 500, 3000. You want Tango Alpha? Okay, I can work with that. You know, and then what you kind of do, and I'm going to cycle back all the way to at the very beginning of the discussion, when I was telling you, you start to memorize the typical entry and exits that are utilized at your particular facility, like Terminal 5, Delta Alpha, and Foxtrot. Those are like two primary arteries coming in and out, depending upon which side of that little arm terminal the gates are. So once you know that, you have a JetBlue land, right? And you're like, all right, Delta Alpha or Foxtrot. And they say gate 40. I said, all right, well, is it Delta Alpha or Foxtrot? Oh, it's Delta Alpha. Okay, great. Boom. And you give them the taxiway. American, Tango Alpha, Tango, November Charlie, right? You got them moving in that direction. You generally know where they're going to be entering. And I'll say one last thing. If there's not a high volume of traffic of going in and out and you don't really necessarily care, well, you could give that option to them and say to them, you know, taxi to Terminal 7 via Right Bravo. Have a nice day. Because you know that they're going to make the left on either Tango Alpha, Tango Sierra, or November Charlie, and you're good to go for there. So that last piece of the puzzle, in reality, is oftentimes omitted because there's a mutual understanding of where they are needing to go, usually because they announced the gate or a particular location. But it also affords you an opportunity, especially when you're trying to move efficiently on the frequency and deal with person A and then B and then C, then D, to get them in the direction they need to go and have an anticipation as to where they're going to actually go into the ramp. So that's basically it. So just don't know, and nobody freak out and think they have to drop a couple $100 on the JEP charts, which would, as much as it'd be nice. And don't freak out thinking that the only way that you can get good at this is if you start memorizing all these specific details. I'm actually encouraging you, don't worry about it. Just try and get out of them entry and exit taxiway, and that's it. And you should be good. Good as gold.
Oh, there we go. Check. Helps to not mute my own microphone.
Neat.
Read you loud and clear.
Gotcha, same. Okay, Sweatbox 2 once again, and we switched streams in the Discord. So if you were watching my stream, go ahead, switch over to Anthony's now. He's streaming his scope while he controls. All right, Steve and Dimitri, both ready to go?
Yep.
All good.
Awesome. Anthony, what config would you like to start out? I was thinking force plus 3-1 left kilo echo, but we can do any of them.
Yeah, that works.
All right. Give me just 1 second to add a few arrivals in here, and then we can get going.
So technique time. I don't know if you guys are comfortable using strip A's. Some of you may have actual strip printers if you're using them. What's nice when you have the actual strip, of course, is you have all that pertinent information. You can arrange your sequence physically. There's a tactile function and use for having that ability of having the strip. Now, when that is absent, the next level of tactile sequencing you can do, and something that I used to do back when, is have like a notepad or some sort of a writing device or implement where you could jot down call sign maybe and fix that they're going to, and then start to sequence on paper and see how it looks. And you can Again, it introduces a kinesthetic, tactile approach to managing your sequence. And then, of course, if you're comfortable not using any of that, you can use a virtual strip A, which I know exists, but some way of just trying to navigate or manage
Left your channel.
who's calling when, what the order is going to be, and how you're going to arrange that. At the end of the day, when there's not any type of restriction otherwise placed in terms of uh, edict or release time or uh, metering in effect that's governing or throttling or governing how and when people are calling you, it's going to be first come first serve. And so as the aircraft communicates with you as it comes first come first serve, you issue the instruction. Now what might happen is aircraft will call in a sequence that isn't necessarily advantageous. So you can deal with it. First of all, if you have the only two people that call are two Robbinsvilles. You can't unnecessarily just tell one Robbinsville he's going to chill at the ramp while give them both the taxi instructions. Let local deal with the separation. If there's a circumstance where you can say take a Robbinsville and a Merritt and a Robbinsville or whatever, if you're running one runway hypothetically, if you are capable of arranging the sequence via ground, so it's a lot easier to launch them, then do it. Again, it really depends on how how the circumstance evolves. Now, you can use what are called choke points, or you can use strategic locations to help manage that. And I'll show you how, like, for example, 31 left to Kilo Echo is going to be our launching point for our southwestbound departures, right? So let's say, for example, I have a Robbinsville and I have a white or a Robbinsville and a Dixie, and another Robbinsville, and I want to be able to sequence them. I can use taxiway Bravo as the sequencing. That's where I'm going to put the lineup, if you will. So that means that I might have an aircraft on Alpha over taxi or taxi beyond that entire area, so that they can then basically 180 and loop back around in line. But there are so many other little arteries that I can choose to inject aircraft in between if I needed to. So hypothetically, if I had a Bravo if I had a Robbinsville taxiing on Bravo near Lima, right, and then I have a Robbinsville on Alpha taxiing westbound, meaning they're going to the back of the conga line, but then behind them a white, I might have the the first Robbinsville guy on Alpha go further out to say Mike Alpha and then make his U-turn. Whereas the white, I might have him loop at Lima Alpha. And now I've created a sequence where my first Robbinsville guy is heading over to Kilo Echo. My white guy just jumped the line, and I injected him into the line a little sooner. So now I have an alternating Robbinsville, white Robbinsville, and the other Robbinsville's guy going all the way to Mike Alpha before he makes a turn. And you can utilize those little arteries, I'll call them, the connection points that are from the Alpha and the Bravo to put aircraft so that you can sequence them in the flow of things, as opposed to having to worry about doing it straight from the ramp. So hopefully that makes sense. I like using, for 31 left, I like using Golf and Hotel as my typical like, so for the event, I had everybody sequenced on Zulu, and that was my sequencing point. But I would functionally use Foxtrot, Golf, sometimes Juliet, but not rarely, because there's not a lot of real estate there. But Golf and Hotel are beautiful because they can taxi via Golf and Hotel short of Yankee. And then when you need to, you can inject them into the sequence at Zulu, however you need to, in order to create a sequence for the local that they can then just launch without thinking about it. So there you go.
With all that said, and the file now fully set up, and it looks like all 81 of the aircraft respond in. So if you're ready,
I am. Did you want to have someone work it and then us kind of inject, or me start? How do you want to do that?
I'd like to start out, at least, Anthony, with you running the show.
Okay.
And I'll take the second to say, if you're interested in hopping in and running this file and plan on being on display here for everybody to see for a little while, go ahead and right-click on yourself in TeamSpeak.
So, question for the lot. I guess maybe first thing here is everybody see that there's an Air China 982 over by T1 by November Charlie in November, right? Or November rather. And then remember what I said about if you were to use Bravo Taxiway as your, that's where we're going to create our sequence for 3-1 left at Kilo Echo. How do we see that there's possibly an issue with giving 982 the most logical taxiway instruction? So logically, I'll say this: 982 to go to 3-1 left, and let's say he's a 4 left departure, would be have him taxi via Bravo, right? But now that would now put him in an unnecessary lineup on heading over for Kilo Echo. So how can I circumvent the lineup to get him to 4 left? So one answer could be, well, okay, here's where I can parallel direction Alpha and Bravo. Problem with that is that I have people coming from IAT wanting to get onto the conga line for 31 left of Kilo Echo. That means that they're going to be opposite. They're going to go the correct, I'll say the preferred clockwise direction on Alpha. Meanwhile, 982 would be going the opposite direction. So how to avoid that? How would you avoid that? Well, you would avoid that by having 982 have to make this long taxiway all the way around, or govern the rest of the scenario based on what you need to do in order to get him out. So when we were talking about choke points before, if I have a guy coming out of Hotel Bravo, Hotel or Golf, and they're coming down and they're wanting to join the conga line for 31 left at Kilo Echo, a choke point could be holding short of taxiway Juliet, which ensures, right, that the aircraft coming in the opposite direction on Alpha has an opportunity to be able to transition onto Kilo and then get across that runway, so that would give way to the aircraft going now the correct clockwise direction Alpha. I will tell you that any of those guys coming from the American terminal, the most advantageous thing to do would be to give them, again, if it's a high volume, if that, like American 142 is a merit, I'm going to give him the long way around on Alpha, because it just logically will make everything make sense by having him make that right turn clockwise. But whereas my Brickyard and the American Robbinsvilles are going to go to 3-1 left at Kilo Echo, I can have them turn left on Bravo, and then they'll logically fit into the conga line. Now, anybody coming from T7, or T8 rather, wanting to fit onto that conga line, how can I create a sequence with them and still have my guys on Alpha who are trying to get into the conga line? Well, I have anybody coming from Terminal 8 hold short November. That's my knee-jerk reaction. So I'm going to take, say, American 3, and I'm going to have the first instruction I'll give, if he's 33 and left at Kilo Echoes, make left Bravo, hold short November. That's a choke point. That's now giving me an opportunity to take, hypothetically, I can't see where Delta's going, but where's Delta going? I got to zoom in a little bit there. Delta's wavy, so he's not an issue, but one of the other guys, hypothetically, Delta 1166, if he was moving a lot closer, I can tell Delta 1166 to go right on Alpha and hold short Mike Alpha, which gives me an opportunity to have Delta on Mike Alpha, the American holding short of Mike, and then whoever I want to go in front of the other person, I would continue the other person's taxi and then tell the other person to follow the other one. I mean, in that case, I picked 2 Robbinsvilles, but hypothetically, if it was advantageous for me to have a non-Robbinsville cut in before one of the Americans coming from T8, then I would have them proceed taxi. So those are those choke points I'm telling you about. For the Kilo Echo, or for the full length, you can have them hold short of Juliet is a choke point to join Kilo for 4 left. And as far as how the sequence goes for 4 left, once you've exhausted all of the real estate on the other side of taxiway Kilo 4, it's really Alpha taxiway north of Juliet, and that's where you can park the aircraft. If you really needed to park aircraft for an extended period of time, have those aircraft waiting for 4 left on Bravo. So you have them turn right on Bravo. Bravo would be the flow on Bravo on that side. All right, follow me here. On between Terminal 4 and Terminal 5, having them flow clockwise on Bravo keeps them out of the way of the aircraft that are flowing clockwise on Alpha to get into the conga line at 31 left. Does that make sense? And then that gives you the real estate to now park aircraft beyond whatever is existing at Kilo If everything starts to back up, utilize that section of Bravo clockwise, just parallel to runway 4 left, to hold aircraft until you have more real estate available to you. So before I continue, does everybody kind of understand how that plays into the idea of using your airport effectively and not having to be pigeonholed into one specific idea?
Dimitri, just to emphasize a point here, there's going to be a couple times I'll message you just to stop launching departures specifically, just so we do get some traffic building up, just to back up, just to create problems and then have to maneuver around. Purely to highlight these points. Does that make sense?
Roger.
Anybody listen to live ATC even recently? You'll hear often, Kennedy Ground this week had often in the morning, I go to work and in the morning there's big pushes, right? And oftentimes you'll hear them Alpha, Golf, join Bravo. So in other words, you know, they're on the correct Alpha clockwise, but it ain't working because of something coming up down the pike. So they need to transition to the parallel taxiway. Well, that would be an example of when things start backing up and the real estate starts getting slow or small. Have them transition, change it up, have them transition to something else that makes it more effective.
All right, Anthony, ready to rock and roll?
Yeah. Do a couple of things.
Okay. Config is part 4 left and 3-1 left Kilo Echo for Southwest Gates. We'll call the info Alpha. You have one tower covering everything, and CBA is open, but you probably don't care. And when you're ready, your control.
Go ahead.
We're live.
Kennedy Ground, American 3, Terminal 8, ready for taxi.
American 3, Kennedy Ground. Say what taxiway you're coming out of, and do you have information, Alpha?
American 3, we got Alpha coming out on Tango.
American 3, runway 31 left at Kilo Echo. Taxi via left, Bravo, hold short November.
Left Bravo, short November, 31 left, Kilo Echo, American 3. And Kennedy Ground, Delta 1166, information Alpha.
Delta 1166, Kennedy Ground. Where are you coming out of the ramp?
Delta 1166, we're over Gulf.
Delta 1166, Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left at Kilo Echo. Taxi right, Alpha, short Juliet.
31 left, Kilo Echo, right Alpha, short Juliet, Delta 1166. And Kennedy Ground, exit jet 471 over at G ramp. Information Alpha exiting at Quebec 4.
Was that Exit Jet 471?
Affirmative.
Exit Jet 471, Kennedy Ground, runway. Where are you going? I can't see. It's moving too fast. What the hell are you going? Bridgeport. Okay. Exit Jet 471, runway 4 left. Taxi via left Quebec, hold short November.
4 left, Quebec, hold short November, exit jet 471. And Kennedy Ground, Brickyard 5683, we're ready for taxi.
Brickyard 5683, Kennedy Ground, where are you coming out?
Brickyard 5683, we're at Terminal 4.
Brickyard 5683, Roger. Do you see the Delta A320 taxiing to the right?
Brickyard 5683, affirmative.
Brickyard 5683, follow the Delta, hold short Juliet.
Brickyard 5683 will follow Delta, hold short of Juliet. And Kennedy Ground, Brickyard 5733, we're at Kilo Foxtrot, ready for taxi.
Brickyard 5733, Kennedy Ground, hold short of Alpha.
Short of Alpha 5733.
Delta 1166, continue on Alpha, hold short Mike Alpha.
Delta 1166, continue Alpha, hold short Mike Alpha. And Endeavour 45, Kennedy Ground, Endeavour 4596, Terminal 4, ready for taxi.
Endeavour 4596, Kennedy Ground, you coming out of hotel?
Affirmative.
Endeavour 4596, Kennedy Ground, runway 3, 1 left at Kilo Echo, taxi right Alpha, short Juliet.
Right Alpha, short Juliet, 31 left at Kilo Echo, Endeavour 4596.
Brickyard 5733, behind the Delta A320 crossing left to right. Taxi straight ahead, left on Bravo, right Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo.
Alright, left Bravo, Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo, follow the Delta.
Brickyard 5733 negative, behind the Delta, don't follow him. Behind the Delta, you can move, continue straight ahead, make the left on Bravo, right Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo.
Alright, behind the Delta.
American 3, continue taxi via Bravo, hold short Lima.
American 3, continue taxi, Bravo, hold short of Lima. And getting ground, the helicopter 69er Foxtrot, GA ramp, ready for taxi.
Helicopter 69 Foxtrot, say direction of flight.
Helicopter 69 Foxtrot, westbound departure.
Helicopter 69 Foxtrot, Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left, Kilo Echo, hover taxi via Quebec, hold short November.
31 left, Kilo Echo, hover taxi, Quebec, hold short, November 69 Foxtrot.
Brickyard 5683, continue taxi via Alpha, hold short Mike Alpha.
5683, continue Alpha, hold short, Mike Alpha.
Endeavor 55, Endeavor 4596, follow the regional jet ahead.
Follow regional jet ahead, Endeavor 4596.
And Endeavor 4596, hold short Mike Alpha.
4596, holding short, Mike Alpha. Kennedy Ground, JetBlue 183, we're over at Foxtrot, ready for taxi.
JetBlue 183, Kennedy Ground, runway 4 left, taxi right on Alpha, hold short Juliet.
Right Alpha, hold short, Juliet, JetBlue 183.
ExitJet 471, continue straight ahead, join Bravo, hold short Kilo Echo.
Straight join Bravo, hold to short, Kilo Echo, ExitJet 471.
Delta 1166, continue straight ahead, short of November.
Straight ahead, short of November, Delta 1166.
Actually, Delta 1166, continue straight ahead and hold short Mike Bravo.
Hold short, Mike Bravo, Delta 1166.
Brickyard 5733, monitor tower 119.1, good day.
Over to Target. Kennedy Ground, Brickyard 4315, ready for taxi.
Brickyard 40, I missed that, 4315 is it?
Brickyard 4315, we're at November, Charlie, ready for taxi.
Brickyard 4315, Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left, Kilo Echo, taxi left, Bravo, short of November.
Left Bravo, hold short of November, 4315.
Delta 1166, left on Mike Bravo, join Bravo, hold short of Kilo Echo.
Say again?
Delta 1166, turn left, Mike Bravo, join Bravo, short of Kilo Echo.
Alright, we'll do that, 1166.
American 3, continue straight ahead, Kilo Echo, monitor tower 191.
American 3, straight ahead, Kilo Echo, monitor Target.
Brickyard 56, I missed it, 5683, you see the Delta A320 on the left?
5683, we got him.
Delta 5683, Delta is your sequence, left Mike Bravo, join Bravo, hold short Kilo Echo.
Alright, left Mike Bravo, hold join Bravo, we'll hold short, Kilo Echo.
Endeavor 4596, follow the regional jet ahead.
4596 will follow the jet. And Kennedy Ground, German Cargo 453, we're ready for taxi. Over at Sierra Bravo, that is.
That's German cargo?
Yep.
German cargo 453, heavy Kennedy Ground, good morning. And you need a push on Sierra Bravo or you're ready for taxi?
I think we'll be ready.
German cargo 453, runway 4 left, taxi via Sierra, hold short of Bravo.
Sierra, hold short of Bravo, runway 4 left, German go.
Brickyard 40, Brickyard, looks like you guys went in the wrong place, but the 4315 should have made left on Mike Bravo, and then Brickyard 5683 follow him. Or no, Brickyard 5683 was, yeah, there it is. Endeavor 4596 is following the Brickyard, right? You got him going?
Yes.
Okay, ExitJet 471, continue straight, make a right turn on taxiway Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor tower 119.1.
Right, should have hit Kilo cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor the tower for
Helicopter
71.
69, oops, sorry, Helicopter 69 at Foxtrot, continue taxi via Bravo and hold short Kilo Echo.
69. We're at GA ramp, ready for taxi.
Kronos 117, Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left at Kilo Echo, taxi left, Quebec, hold short November.
Left Quebec, hold short November 117.
Brickyard 4315, you got a helicopter passing right to left, follow the helicopter, hold short Kilo Echo.
4315 will continue after the helicopter, hold short Kilo Echo. Canada Ground, Air China 982 Heavy, ready for taxi over at November.
Air China 982 Heavy, Kennedy Ground, hold short of Alpha.
Hold short of Alpha 982.
JetBlue 183, continue taxi on Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo.
183, continue by Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo.
Delta 1166, bound out of the tower, 119.1.
1166 over to tower.
Brickyard 5683, bound out of the tower, 119.1.
5683 over to tower.
Endeavor 4596, towers, 119.1.
4596 over to tower.
Helicopter 69 Foxtrot, contact tower, 119.1.
It's November 69 Foxtrot over to tower.
Brickyard 4315, towers, 119.1.
Over to tower. Canada Ground, cargo jet 3218 ready for taxi over at Charlie.
Cargo jet 3218, Kennedy Ground, runway 4 left, taxi left on Charlie, right Echo, hold short, 31 right at Echo.
Left on Charlie, right on Echo, hold short 31 at Echo.
Air China 982 Heavy, runway 4 left, taxi left on taxiway Alpha, hold short, Juliet.
Left on Alpha, hold short Juliet 982 Heavy.
German Air Cargo 453 Heavy, runway 4 left, taxi left on Alpha, hold short Foxtrot.
Alpha, hold short Foxtrot, runway 4 left German cargo. And Canada Ground, American 142 Heavy, ready for taxi over to November Charlie.
American 142 Heavy, Kennedy Ground, runway 4 left, taxi right on Alpha, hold short Foxtrot.
Right Alpha, hold short Fox 142 Heavy. And Canada Ground, Brickyard 4338 ready for taxi, we're all set November Charlie.
Brickyard 4338, Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left to Kilo Echo, behind the American, taxi via left Bravo, hold short November.
Right, 31 left Kilo Echo, behind the American, left Bravo, hold short Kilo Echo 4338.
Air China 982 Heavy, I just want to make sure you're going to start your taxi soon.
982, we're doing it now.
Thank you. And what was the CNS 117 again? What was that called again?
I think it's Kronos.
Kronos, right? Yeah. Kronos 117, continue, make the right turn on Bravo, join Bravo, hold short Kilo Echo.
Right turn Bravo, join Bravo, hold short Kilo Echo Kronos 117.
Brickyard 4338, you're going to see a Air China 747 coming out of November. Give way to the Air China.
Give way to the Air China. And our 5015 Kennedy Ground, ready for taxi Terminal 4. We're at November, I think it is.
That's who? Endeavor 5015?
Hey, affirmative.
Endeavor 5015, I see at hotel, runway 4 left, taxi right Alpha, short of Juliet.
Right Alpha, short of Juliet, Endeavor 5015. And Canada Ground, Air China 982 Heavy. Say again our taxi instruction, please.
Left on Alpha, hold short Kilo. Left on Alpha, hold short Juliet.
Left on Alpha, hold short Juliet 982 Heavy. And Canada Ground Delta 1907 over at Kilo Foxtrot, ready for taxi.
Delta 1907, Kennedy Ground, 4 left, taxi left Alpha, hold short of Kilo.
Left Alpha, hold short of Kilo, runway 4 left 1907.
Brickyard 4338, just so you understand, you're not going to follow the 74, you're going to continue on Bravo.
4338 will continue on Bravo, disregard the Heavy.
Kronos 117, monitor the tower, 119.1.
117 over to Tower, we'll see ya. And Canada Ground, Endeavor 5535 over at Hotel, ready for taxi.
Endeavor
Oh, sorry,
55.
Hotel Bravo.
Yep, Endeavor 5535, Kennedy Ground, hold short of Alpha for now.
5535 short of Alpha.
Endeavor 5015, Kennedy, you coming out of the ramp anytime soon?
5015, can we get that taxi instruction one more time, please?
Sure. Endeavor 5015, runway 4 left, taxi right Alpha, short of Mike, Hotel Bravo.
Right Alpha, short of Hotel Bravo, 5015.
Endeavor 5535, Kennedy Ground, 4 left, taxi via right on Alpha, hold short, taxiway Juliet.
Right, Endeavor 5535, 4 left via right on Alpha, hold short Juliet.
And Delta 1907, you going to start your taxi soon?
Delta 1907, we might need that taxi instruction one more time.
Delta 1907, hold short of Alpha for now. I got traffic. It's going to be moving right to left.
I will hold short of Alpha Delta 1907.
Thank you. Endeavor 5535, continue taxi on Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor Tower 191. See you later.
5535, cross 31 left at Kilo, will continue by Kilo ground, or Tower 191, good day.
Endeavor 5015, follow the regional jet, cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor Tower 109.1.
5015, cross follow 191. Kennedy Ground JetBlue 1869, now we're ready for taxi over at Alpha.
JetBlue 1869, Kennedy Ground, 4 left, taxi right on Alpha, hold short hotel.
Right on Alpha, hold short Hotel 1869.
And German Cargo 453, continue taxi and hold short of Foxtrot, please.
453, continue taxi, hold short of Foxtrot.
American 14, was it 140? American 142, follow the heavy 777 ahead, hold short, taxiway Foxtrot.
142 will follow the heavy, hold short of Fox. And
Air China
Kennedy
982
Ground
Heavy,
Delta
you see the regional
1841.
jet off the right-hand side, just right now, taxiway Kilo. That's for Air China 982 Heavy.
China 982 heavy, say again.
Air China 982 Heavy, you see the regional jet off the right-hand side?
We got him.
Air China 982 Heavy, follow the regional jet, make the right turn at Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor Tower 91. See you later.
China 982 Kilo, cross 31 left at Kilo, Tower 91.
Delta 1907, Kennedy Ground, taxi left on Alpha, hold short of Kilo.
1907 left on Alpha, hold short of Kilo, 4 left. Kennedy Ground Delta 1845 Hotel Bravo, ready for taxi.
Delta 1845, Kennedy Ground, 4 left, taxi right on Alpha, hold short of taxiway. Actually, make the right turn on Alpha, join Kilo, and hold short of 31 left at Kilo.
Right, Delta 1845, right turn Alpha, join Kilo, hold short 31 left at Kilo.
Delta 1907, hold short of Kilo.
Hold short of Kilo 1845.
Delta 1907, you see the company A320 off your left?
Alright, we got him.
Delta 1907, follow the company, hold short, 31 left at Kilo.
Alright, follow the company, hold short 31 left at Kilo.
German Air
Kennedy
Cargo
Ground
453 Heavy,
2615 over Sierra, ready for taxi.
German Air Cargo 453 Heavy, continue taxi, hold short of hotel.
453, continue taxi, hold short Hotel.
American 142, continue taxi, hold short of hotel.
142, continue taxi, hold short of Hotel.
JetBlue
Ground
1869, continue
over
on
Sierra, ready for
Alpha,
taxi.
join Kilo, hold short of 31 left at Kilo. That's JetBlue 1869, continue on Alpha, hold short of 31 left at Kilo.
1869, we'll continue by Alpha, hold short of Kilo.
Delta 1845, cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor Tower 91. See you later.
45, cross at Kilo, Tower 91, good day.
Delta 1907, follow the company, cross 31 left at Kilo, monitor Tower 119.1. Good day.
Delta 1907 will do the same, good day.
And calling for taxi, say again.
Connie 615 over Sierra, ready for taxi, heavy.
County 615 Heavy, Kennedy Ground, 31 left at Kilo Echo, taxi via Sierra, hold short Bravo.
Sierra, hold short, Bravo, Connie 615, heavy. Kennedy Ground, Copa 803, Terminal 4, ready for taxi.
Copa 803, Kennedy Ground, just verify you're coming out of Kilo, was it Foxtrot?
Kilo Foxtrot, affirmative.
Copa 803, Kennedy Ground, 4 left, taxi left on Alpha, hold short, Kilo Delta.
Left on Alpha, short, Kilo Delta, Copa 803.
American 142 Heavy, hold short, taxiway Hotel.
142, short of Hotel.
German
Ground,
Cargo 453 Heavy, continue on Alpha, hold short, and join Kilo, hold short, 31 left at Kilo.
Alright, continue Alpha, join Kilo, hold short, 31 left at Kilo.
JetBlue 1869, continue on Alpha, Kilo, hold short of 31 left at Kilo.
JetBlue 1869, continue via Alpha, Kilo, hold short, 31 left at Kilo.
Copa 803, you're going to see a JetBlue A320 off your left, follow the JetBlue, hold short, 31 left at Kilo.
We'll follow him, hold short, Copa 803. And can I ground Endeavor 5086 over at Kilo Fox, ready for taxi.
Endeavor
User disconnected from your
5086,
channel.
Kennedy ground. Runway 4 left, taxi left on Alpha, hold short Kilo Delta.
Left Alpha, hold short of Kilo Delta, Endeavor 5086.
Connie 615, join Bravo, hold short Mike, November.
German Bravo, short of November, Connie 615.
German Air Cargo 453 Heavy, continue straight ahead on Bravo. Join Kilo, hold short 31 left at Kilo.
453, continue via Bravo, we'll join Kilo. Get a ground JetBlue 1602, ready for taxi over at Golf.
JetBlue 1602, Kennedy ground, 4 left taxi right on Alpha, hold short Hotel.
Right Alpha, short of Hotel 1602.
JetBlue 1869, actually hold short.
1869, holding short. And get a ground Cargo King 232 Sierra Bravo, ready for taxi.
Cargo King 232 Heavy, is Cargo King 232 is who called?
Cargo King 232 heavy, affirmative.
Cargo King 232 Heavy, Kennedy ground, runway 4 left taxi via Sierra, hold short Bravo.
Sierra, hold short Bravo, Cargo King 232 heavy.
JetBlue 1869, caution, actually runway 3 left at Kilo. Cross runway 3 left at Kilo and monitor tower 19.1.
1869, cross ground, or tower, good day.
Copa 803, follow the JetBlue, cross 3 left at Kilo to monitor tower 19.1, good day.
Copa 803 will cross, monitor tower, good day.
German Air Cargo 453 Heavy, follow the Copa 737, cross runway 3 left at Kilo, monitor tower 9.1, good day.
German Cargo 453, cross, monitor.
Endeavor 5086, continue, make the right turn on Kilo, cross 3 left at Kilo, monitor tower 19.1, have a good day.
5086, next right turn on Kilo, across the runway, tower point 9, good day. Tower point 1. And get a ground FedEx 988 Charlie 2, ready for taxi.
FedEx 988, Kennedy ground, runway 3 left at Kilo Echo, taxi via Charlie, hold short Victor.
Charlie, hold short of Victor 988 heavy.
What was CJT 3218 again? What was CJT?
Cargo jet.
Cargo jet, that's it. Cargo jet 3218, cross runway 31 right at Echo, join Bravo, short of Gulf.
Cargo Jet 615 second.
Cargo jet 3218, I'm going to amend instructions. Cross 31 right at Echo, join Bravo, hold short Foxtrot.
3 right, we'll cross and we'll follow the instructions.
American 142, continue taxi on Alpha, join Kilo, hold short 31 right, 31 left at Kilo.
Continue Alpha, join Kilo, hold short 31 left at Kilo.
JetBlue 1602, follow the American ahead, hold short of 31 left at Kilo.
1602 will follow the American, hold short 31 left at Kilo.
Delta 3341, Kennedy ground, where are you coming in? Delta 3341, Kennedy ground, what are you looking to enter the ramp via?
Delta 3331, it's whatever you can give us.
Delta 3341, what terminal are you looking for?
Delta 3331, we're going to Terminal 4.
It's actually, I'm going to Terminal 1.
Okay. Delta 3341, follow the JetBlue ahead, hold short of taxiway Juliet.
Follow JetBlue will hold short of Juliet.
Actually, Delta 3341, disregard. You're going to continue on Alpha and hold short Mike Alpha.
Alright, 3341, continue Alpha, hold short Mike Alpha.
Thank you. Kalita 615 Heavy, continue on Bravo and hold short of Kilo Echo.
Connie 615 Heavy, continue Alpha, hold short Kilo Echo. And get a ground Alaska 21 Victor, ready for taxi.
Alaska 21 Kennedy ground, runway 4 left, taxi right Alpha, hold short Delta Alpha.
Right Alpha, Delta Alpha, 4 left, Alaska 21.
UPS 4206 Kennedy ground, you on my frequency?
We're here.
UPS 4206, where you going?
Going to the UPS ramp.
UPS 4206 Heavy, roger. Make the second left turn on taxiway Alpha and taxi Alpha Sierra to parking. See you later.
Alpha Sierra to parking, UPS 4206.
Cargo Jet 3218, give way, or sorry, behind the UPS 757, continue on Bravo, hold short hotel.
All right, behind the UPS, we'll continue via Bravo Joint Hotel.
American 142, cross runway 3 on left at Kilo, monitor tower 19.1.
142, cross runway 31 left at Kilo, monitor the tower.
JetBlue
Can-
1602, follow the American, cross runway 3 on left at Kilo, monitor tower 19.1.
1602, follow the American, cross the runway, tower. Good day.
Cargo 232 heavy, runway 4 left, taxi left on Alpha, hold short Delta Alpha.
Right, air cargo 232 heavy, left Alpha, hold short. Say again the hold short?
Delta Alpha, left on Alpha, hold short Delta Alpha.
Left on Alpha, hold short Delta Alpha.
FedEx 988, turn right here at Victor, cross through and right at Victor, join Bravo, short of Sierra.
988, we'll do that.
JetBlue 1602, continue across the runway here, please. Runway through,
User
cross runway through and left at Kilo and contact tower 19 or monitor tower 19.1.
31 left, cross at Kilo, tower 19.1.
Clear 615 heavy, make the right at Kilo Echo, hold short at 31 left at Kilo Echo, monitor tower 19.1.
Chronos 615, heavy right on Kilo Echo, monitor the tower.
Sorry, Kronos.
And can you ground Emirates 5, Romeo Quebec Super Kilo Golf ready for taxi.
Emirates 5, Romeo Quebec, Super, Kennedy ground, runway 4 left, taxi left Alpha, short of Kilo Delta.
Left Alpha, hold short Kilo Delta, Emirates 5, Romeo Quebec.
And paused. Cool. Decent bit of volume, huh, for the 4 left overflow 3-1 left Kilo Echo, right?
You asking me?
More of a statement. Yeah, that's got to see definitely putting into play exactly what Anthony was talking about how we're defending, how we're moving non-standard directions on Alpha on that south part of the main ramp there, especially. And got the UPS, so the arrival, the randomly generated one that crossed Foxtrot right at the same time. Excuse me, right at the same time, cargo jet's going the wrong way on Bravo, but all that, like, there's a way to work it out. Just bring them up, okay, bring them left on Alpha, put them in the front of the line, send them all the way around relatively long way over to Sierra, but it still works out just fine. I'm inclined to delete everybody who's taxiing now in the arrival sequence, in the departure sequence, I should say here, and switch the configuration up here to... What do you think, Anthony? You want to run 3-1s or 2-2 next? I don't see anybody volunteering to take over, which is understandable.
Well, maybe if we have any questions, but just one very huge thing that I did not have to do is what you would do is obviously you would know when you'd have to coordinate with local when and how you're crossing that runway 3-1 left behind. You don't want to have a guy crossing behind someone who's departing. So that obviously would be a little bit more orchestrated once you're working with your local guy. But other than that, I think it's generally as it was. Any questions or comments or concerns? Any aha moments? Can everybody do that already? Or is this just a gigantic waste of time?
Sorry to interrupt you, Anthony.
No, I thought everybody was just quiet because I don't know why.
Well,
I got worried.
part of it's because I suck and I thought that I unmuted everybody and I didn't. But now everybody should be able to talk at least.
Okay.
Dimitri, can you help me delete everybody in the sequence at 4 left, please?
Will do.
Hopefully everybody saw that there wasn't a lot of people waiting for an enormous amount of time. And I basically, if you called up, I gave you an instruction and we had a plan in play, you know?
Yeah, like it was it's so many aircraft, but at no point was it like disorderly. And yeah, you were given a lot of instructions that are just like complicated to get the commands to go because as folks off of Sierra going a long way around, well, ATC trainer doesn't know that, so they're going to try to go the wrong way. So that's why you had those couple that were hanging out just short of Delta for no reason. All right. Cool. So If anybody would like to take control of the file, go ahead and post in the Training Room 2 channel now.
Yeah, I would really like to see someone jump in.
I do it myself, but I found out the hard way. I cannot run ATC Trainer and also control.
Well, anybody S1 or
Yeah,
Bree?
Truman, you were messaging. Interested in it? I know Kennedy is not your field, but
Yeah,
Well-
I'm interested, but yeah, like you said, Kennedy's not my field, so. But I'll still try. Be interesting.
all right. Then in that case, why don't we keep the configuration the same as it was, just for the sake of not making this too weird.
Yeah, we'll see how I do.
All right. So we did delete everybody out, so we get mostly a blank slate. The one exception is Emirates 5 Romeo Quebec Super. We'll give him his taxi here. Well, actually, go ahead and give him his taxi first. You can issue that taxi to Emirates how you'd like.
Okay, sorry. So what's the config is 3-1. Okay, sorry. Give me a sec.
However, did better than I do.
Okay, so what's the config?
All right, departing, arriving 4s, but all the arrivals will be on 4 right. Depart 4 left, full length for everybody who's not a southwest gate, and 3-1 left at Kilo Echo for your southwest gates. Simplistically, for this file, that means that if they're Robbinsville, they depart 3-1 left Kilo Echo. Anything else, they go to 4 left.
Okay, gotcha. So Robbinsville, 3-1 left, and everything else 4 left.
That's correct.
Okay, let's see.
All right. Go ahead and give Steven, let's pick up again with Emirates 5 Romeo Quebec
User
Super.
was
Make the
moved
call
out
one
of
more
your
time.
channel.
All right, we're all ready to go.
Yeah, I'm going to stay paused until Truman
User
issues
was
the first
moved
control
to your
instruction.
channel.
Kennedy Ground, Emirates
User
5
was
Romeo
moved
Quebec
out of
Kilo
your
Golf,
channel.
ready for taxi.
Emirates 5, Romeo, Quebec, Kennedy Ground, good evening. Runway 4, left, taxi via Alpha, Kilo. Hold short of runway 3-1 left at Kilo.
4 left, Alpha Kilo, hold short, 3 left at Kilo, Emirates 5 Romeo Quebec. And Kennedy Ground, air transport 3516, heavy G ramp, ready for taxi.
And last station, repeat call sign, please.
Air transport 3516, heavy.
All right, air transport. All right, 3334 heavy. Kennedy Ground, good evening. Runway 4, left, taxi via Quebec, hold short of Bravo.
And Kennedy Ground, just to confirm, air transport 3516, we were the one that called.
Oh, sorry, yeah, kind of similar. Air transport 3516 heavy, Kennedy Ground. Runway 4 left, taxi via Quebec, Bravo. Hold short of Bravo.
Quebec, hold short of Bravo 516.
So there, Truman, you want to have them hold short November. The whole concept of having them choke there is if you have people that are coming south on Bravo already, and if you're having them move Quebec short of Bravo, there's not going to be enough wing clearance for them to transition to each other. So having them short of November allows you to have a guy coming south on Bravo go in front of them, or vice versa if necessary. Makes sense?
Yeah, I see it now. Thank you.
And Kennedy Ground, Brickyard 5750, hold Bravo, ready for taxi.
Brickyard 5750, Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left, taxi via Alpha, hold short of Juliet.
Alpha short of Juliet, 5750.
Air
At the
transport
intersection,
35.
hold up. At the intersection, remember. If you just say 3-1 left, he's going full length. We'll go the other way on Juliet. Kennedy does that, but not when we're using Kilo Echo for the overflow.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the stuff isn't really ingrained in my brain, so.
I have to, if anybody's interested for a really interesting teachable moment,
Sure.
intersection departures from a ground standpoint is not specified. The only time that intersection needs to be mentioned is in takeoff clearances, which I've dug deep into the rabbit hole on this concept. And I will tell you that in performance practice, 9 times out of 10, they will issue controllers will issue the destination with the acknowledging the intersection in the destination, the runway, because it's silly not to, and it just increases safety and situational awareness. But in theory, you could give an instruction like runway 31 taxi via Alpha Kilo Echo. But the takeoff clearance must specify runway 31 left at Kilo Echo, clear for takeoff. Now, that again is the difference between maybe a glaring omission of 1065 or just the fact that there isn't a rule there and what is best performance practice. So if anybody really wants to be on trivia and know that exists, however, the performance practice that is done 99% of the time by every CPC in the country is that when you issue the taxi instructions to an intersection, you have that fully stated in the beginning of it. So fun fact for the day.
Cool.
And then pause here.
User joined your channel.
And 5750 was the last guy, affirmative.
He didn't actually taxi yet.
Okay.
Technically, the instruction you gave wasn't wrong then. Either way. Alpha short of Juliet gave.
Yeah, technically to the rule book, but let's for argument's say that we're going to teach what is done at most facilities. So in theory, you would be slapped on the wrist by a local controller, by the local teacher. They don't want you learning it differently. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So go with what Jason said the first time around. I'm just identifying in case you're a book rat and you're specific to looking at regulations. It actually does not exist.
And again, grounded at 5341, also at the Hotel Bravo, ready for taxi.
Endeavor 5341 Kennedy Ground, good evening. Runway 31 left at Kilo Echo, taxi via Alpha, hold short of Juliet.
Alpha short of Juliet, 31 left, Kilo Echo, 5341.
Emirates 5 Romeo Quebec, cross runway 31 left at Kilo, continue taxi via Kilo, contact Tower 119.1.
Emirates 5 Romeo Quebec, cross 31 left at Kilo, continue via Kilo, contact Tower.
Endeavor 5341 should get 4 left for departure, not 31 left, because he's in Northgate. Neon's at Northgate, and that completely changes the Traycon's problem if they have Northgates coming off of 31 left versus 4 left.
Gotcha.
So I didn't move him yet. You can go ahead and resend him to 4 left.
Okay, thank you. Endeavor 5341, runway 4 left, taxi via Alpha Kilo, hold short of runway 31 left at Kilo.
There 5341 Alpha Kilo, hold short 31 left at Kilo. Get a ground, JetBlue 939 Foxtrot, ready for taxi.
JetBlue 931 Kennedy Ground, runway 31 left at Kilo Echo, taxi via Alpha, hold short of Hotel.
Alpha short of Hotel, 31 left, Kilo Echo 939.
Brickyard 5750, continue taxi via Alpha Kilo Echo, contact Tower 119.1.
Alpha, Kilo, Echo, Brickyard 5750, Tower 191, we'll see.
Now, can I just say something real quick? Truman, what will help you is if you have 2 letters next to each other, make sure that your rhythmic cadence indicates that it's Kilo Echo and not Kilo Echo, because that could be confusing, especially when, even though they're not necessarily close, this airport does have a taxiway Echo somewhere. So, and when you phrase it that way, it's understood about a taxiway with 2 letters. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, I'm just checking everything slow, so it may sound a little bit different than it usually does.
And again, at ground Delta 2019 Heavy Hotel Bravo, ready for taxi.
Last station calling, repeat call sign.
Delta 2019 Heavy, Hotel Bravo.
Delta 2019 Kennedy Ground, good evening. Runway 4 left, taxi via Alpha Kilo.
4 left Alpha Kilo, Delta 2019. And Kennedy Ground, Pittsburgh Jet 40, GA ramp ready for taxi.
Repeat call sign.
Pittsburgh Jet 40.
It's a call sign Pittsburgh Jet.
Affirmative Papa Juliet Charlie.
Okay, Pittsburgh Jet 40, Kennedy Ground, runway 4 left, taxi via taxi via Quebec, hold short of November.
Quebec short of November, runway 4 left, Pittsburgh Jet 40.
Endeavor 5341, cross runway 31 left at Kilo, continue taxi via Kilo, contact tower.
5341, cross 31 left at Kilo, continue taxi via Kilo, tower 191.
Delta 2019, follow the CRJ in front of you, cross runway 31 left at Kilo.
2019, follow the CRJ, will cross 31 left at Kilo.
I don't know where he's going. He's gone.
And, Truman, just one thing about Delta 2019, make sure to inform him of the hold short. So even if an aircraft is in sequence, like Delta was behind Endeavor, and Endeavor was hold short, you need to reiterate the hold short Delta so that when Endeavor moves, Delta is still under the impression that he's holding short unless explicitly told otherwise. And even if you tell Delta to follow Endeavor, he can't cross that runway until you give him the magic words.
Yeah.
So in your initial instruction, just remember to tell him whether to cross or hold short, if whatever the case may be.
And Kennedy Ground, November 27 Mike, Quebec 4, ready for taxi.
November 27 Mike, Kennedy Ground, runway 4 left, taxi via Quebec, hold short of November.
Quebec hold short of November, runway 4 left, 27 Mike.
Can you pause for a second? So do you find that it's getting easier for you to manage, like people coming out of the GAT? You take a second to breathe and negotiate other traffic because you already know initial instruction is always going to be Quebec short of November, right? That gives you a moment to now focus on other things and then get back to them to continue taxi whenever it's appropriate. So just that having that knee-jerk, very default, quick response allows the flow to continue going without unnecessarily keeping them at the ramp, and then you be able to manage the other aircraft on your frequency. Same thing like you did with JetBlue holding short of Hotel. You protected that exit, Hotel and Hotel Bravo, which is a very popular exit. You protected it by allowing you the opportunity to have JetBlue stop at Hotel so you can manage if the case were to be the case that people were coming out of there. And if it isn't, all right, well then you can just at any point tell JetBlue to continue.
Yeah.
So you're seeing already, excuse me, everybody's getting a chance to see some of the stuff in play here. And here you've got a guy who's never worked the airport before, maybe looked at the SOPs before, with something like 60 aircraft trying to depart, just avoiding putting himself in too many really bad positions or dangerous situations. So take those defensive control instructions and those first few canned reactions and almost instinctive responses and see what you can do. And this is something that scales well to any problem, large or small. Steven, there's one more aircraft I want you to call up with. And Truman, for this one, work with your tower controller. Go ahead.
Kennedy Ground 4-3 Mike Juliet, Quebec 4, red taxi.
November 4 Mike Juliet, Kennedy Ground. All right, that was kind of ominous.
Well, what is he? What's he trying to do?
Oh, I mean, okay, so he's a Piper.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and he's ready for taxi.
Yep, VFR with flight following, so he should have gotten the standard VFR departure out of here from your clearance delivery controller.
Yes, so he's going to go to 4 left.
Is that the smartest way to do this?
Probably
The SOPs
not,
say
because
the SOPs say sure.
well, probably not, because there's a lot of larger aircrafts using 4 lefts and tree 1 left.
So how else might we be able to get him out of here? Here's your tower. Dimitri's working your tower right now. He's your local controller.
So it's probably best to ask him
Mm-hmm.
the other options for this aircraft to not disrupt traffic flow.
Yeah. So don't go to the tower and say, hey, what do you want to do? Go to the tower with some kind of an idea what might work, and if it won't, then it turns into a two-way conversation. Ground and local talk all the time. So that's something that's a little bit not the easiest thing to pick up on when and why, especially if the person's busy. It feels like, oh, you're interrupting. And you might get yelled at for it. That's fine too. That's part of the process. That's realistic too. So Dimitri, where would you think that 4-3 Mike Juliet would be a good, like, what's a logical way to get him out of here?
Well, we put him in the intersection departure.
Another 3-1 left Kilo Echo?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that works. I'd also be thinking, what about like Kilo Delta or something, or even maybe further up 3-1 left, but then
Yep,
you have the
even
wake
closer.
problems to solve, yeah. Again, the point isn't to actually get him out of here. The point is, like, what can we do? This guy, all he really needs to do is make that one turn, and then he's out of our way. That's obviously, as a ground controller, as an S1, you probably don't have, you're not expected to be responsible and accountable for all the knowledge of separation and all that. But understand that the VFR folks they can be expediently dealt with without having to make them necessarily drive all the way out.
Can I add something to that?
Please. By the way, hi, Dakota.
Hello. I'm only here for a few minutes, so I'm waiting for training. But another thing to think about when you're doing intersection departures is intersection departure wake turbulence. Especially with the jets going off of Kilo Echo, you're gonna want to probably put him either further down or behind stuff, knowing you don't want to delay him too much if you're just gonna get him out of the way. Because that can be 2 to 3 minutes of waiting.
Makes sense.
And consistently reset too if tower is consistently launching stuff. Just a thought. That was really all I wanted to add. Everything else Jason said was correct.
Yeah, thank you for
Gotcha.
that. Cool. I did pause here just because we have run ourselves out of time, actually a little bit more than that. So first up, thanks everybody for sticking around and letting us run along. And Truman, I know you just got to work it for just a few minutes, but even in those just a few minutes, I know you got to see some of the concepts, and like even in just the 10 minutes or so you were working, could feel like the comfort and the flow a little bit just increasing and improving. Not to say it was perfect, but nor was it expected to be. So Anthony didn't do a perfect job either, and I wouldn't either. Nobody would, especially once you get to this point, like it's effective and safe and orderly, is what we're going for more than anything else. Like you said, safety is a little bit of a fake concept when we're talking about pretend airplanes, but the effective and efficient still definitely count. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in this here for the night. But before we part ways, I'd like to open the floor. Who has questions about what? And if you have something that you're not comfortable posting or saying in a public forum, please feel free to send me a TeamSpeak or a Discord private message. And you're not going to hurt my feelings. And I'd love to hear your feedback too, by the way, about how this session went. If you liked the format, hated it, things you would like to see more of this or less of it, or something different or whatever in the future. But yeah, opening up to questions and all that. Before I do, I'll say thanks everybody for your time one more time tonight. So fire away, guys.
If anyone doesn't have any questions, I'll also add that at some point in the future, I'm still working on it, but there will be a tower box as well that will run as a workshop. I'm still figuring out the dates for it. So.
Awesome. Anybody have anything for the group at all? Going once. Twice. All right, nothing heard. Anthony, do you have any parting shots or thoughts or inputs for the crowd here?
I do not. I've said my piece.
I think I have too. All right, Truman, really appreciate you getting up in front of the crowd and working this hectic problem at an airport that you're not sorted on.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Once again, if anybody has comments, feel free to drop them my way later on. And for the final time, thank you everybody for your time. And yep, we'll get this recording up on the website here, at least on YouTube, here before too terribly long. That's all for tonight. Everybody have a great evening.
You too.
User left your channel.
Thanks, Jason.